The last night we were in Spain, we went to a performance by this young man. There was flamenco dance, there was guitar music, there was percussion, and the young man and his brother were mesmerizing. This is how I start my paintings, is I needed to create what I call an environment on the page that spoke about Spain, that spoke about my experience in Spain. So I think it's probably a good idea to explain to you how I start that process, because I create these abstractions on the page that are often made up of pattern, color, shape, marks that are interesting to me. And speaking about Spain and the vocabulary of the music there and the architecture, the decor, I began to use tile patterns, designs, beautiful organic curves that you see in Moorish architecture. Then I had to figure out, how am I going to plant my musician and his guitar and give some sense of the performance that he gave for us. So perhaps the lighting and the feeling of the music without having any ability to share that music, but visually communicate it. Not long after, I thought, okay, I think I have enough cooking. It's a little bit like a cook would create what's called a sofrito, where you start with some tomatoes and some peppers and some onions, and you get something cooking in the pot, and then you decide what you want to make. And I do it with a big, thick piece of charcoal because you don't want to get too prissy and begin dealing with too much detail on something like this. You want to keep things open and you want to keep things loose. And so I use a piece of vine charcoal. If I don't like what I drew, you can just wash it off with a sponge or rub it out with your hand, and so you haven't made a permanent commitment. And so I began to simply carve out the performer. And so some of my early sketches are very rough. I'm laying in some colors, I'm laying in some values, but it hasn't developed the richness, the range of colors that I'm going to get to in subsequent layers. So what happens is that as layers get put on, the painting begins to get darker. There begin to be a wider range of colors. You hope to build a patina and a kind of richness. And in the final layers of the painting, what you're hoping for is that you have this kind of passionate environment, that communicates something about the music that this young man was playing. And so, if you look at the choice of colors that I've used, we have these deep purples, these wonderful brick reds that you see in the Mosque of Cordova. We have a palette of colors that speak both about a moody performance, a musical piece, but also perhaps, the dramatic lighting that you see in, a performance like this. The festival is looking at how the old world music influences and influenced various musicians along the way. So again, as an artist, what was appealing to me was this idea of one masterpiece then speaking to a subsequent masterpiece. And so that I totally get, because as an artist, we're always seeing how we can reinterpret that thing. Where does creativity come from? How do we find our ideas? And how do we look to the past and, let it help us, let it instruct us as to what we're going to do as we look to the future?